mindfulness? Is it all just a trend? And is it me? Or does everyone have their own version of it? With over 38 million hashtags on Instagram, it's clear that it's a hot topic right now, and it's on the rise. One thing's for sure though, it means different things to different people, and everyone's got their own way of creating that space in their lives that resonates with them. We all want to feel great whilst balancing our work with our pleasure, and each week, our mindful makers show us that there are many routes in order to show up and create awareness and presence in the world. Our guests today are Shereen and Mahdiah, two very inspiring ladies that encourage us to connect to the nature within us as equally as the nature that surrounds us. Together, they created Hikma, a brand that fuses nature, tradition, and science to enhance the well-being of those who come in contact with it. Through Hikma, Mahdiah and Shereen invite us to slow down and show us that a quick fix isn't the only way to well-being. Their products are designed to be incorporated into daily practices that serve as reminders to reconnect with yourself in a busy world using the power of plants and so much more, which I firmly believe we could all benefit from. Hello and welcome to the show.
Hi, Sahar. Thank you for having us.
Pleasure. How have you been?
Good. We're so happy to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to be here. Super busy, but really excited and happy, and I'm feeling very fulfilled with what we're doing, which is a blessing.
That is a true blessing. Thank you for taking time out of your busy worlds to be with me today.
Thank you.
So I first came across your wonderful brand at the Third Line, which is a fantastic gallery and exhibition space in El Sakal. Shout out to Sunny and the team at Third Line.
Shout out.
Hey, Sunny.
And it was just so refreshing to see a modern sort of herbalist brand in the UAE that's completely homegrown in Dubai. And specifically, I loved hearing about your stories when it came to creating awareness about the herbs in the region, just as much as the herbs around the other world, because I think that's something that historically has not been massively brought into the forefront of modern culture and society yet. So I believe you're doing something very new and unique and much needed in today's world. So thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you.
And I'm really excited to share your journey with our lovely listeners today. So if you don't mind coming on this journey with me, we're going to take a little walk down into the meaning of your brand. I'm a massive fan of the meaning behind words. And I read that Hikma is a concept of seeking balance through the infinite wisdom of the natural world. That's so beautiful and on point. Tell me, how did you arrive at this word?
What's interesting, I think, is that both Shereen and I really resonated with the word and the concept even before our paths crossed. So I thought that was really magical to some extent. And it means slightly different things for both of us, I think. For myself, Hikma is a concept that I kind of grew up with. And growing up, I would always kind of hear of this word and this concept. And it was in reference to the wisdom basically provided by our creator into creation. And it was in reference to the Islamic concept that there's a cure for every illness in the natural world. And then expanding on that, it referred to seeking balance in the everyday life and basically aiming for that balance, whether it's spiritually or in our family lives, working lives. It was just like aiming to be in balance, and that there is wisdom in that. And then there's also the tradition of Hikma, which refers to the type of medicine that was practiced in the Islamic world, which was and still is very much attached and linked to the world of plants and the natural world, basically. So that's what Hikma meant to me and means to me. And then Shereen also has a beautiful story behind that.
The Baghdad one.
Yeah.
I was like, which story? I have so many. I was looking for names, and it's always hard to find a name that resonates, and it has to really mean something. And I didn't land on that name specifically, but it was one of the things that really called to me because of Beit al-Hikma, the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, which was an old library that housed all of the first texts, the medicine texts, plant medicine texts from Dioscorides and Ibn Sina that were translated into Arabic and held in the House of Wisdom in Iraq, in Beit al-Hikma. So I'm Iraqi. I've been, this whole journey has been like trying to reconnect to my roots. A lot of it has been, not all. And that's what it really called to me a lot. And I don't know, not sure if you know, but Mahdiah chose Hikma before I met her, the name for the business. So, and then my sister met Mahdiah at an event and said, I've just met this amazing woman that has started this herbal brand and you need to go meet and get in touch. And we did. And decided to join forces.
Wow. So you almost independently connected to this word in your own worlds. And when you joined forces, you realized it was already such a common ground for both of you in a lot of ways.
And just, I think because we got on so well straight away, I look back at that first meeting and I laugh because it was like, we just decided there was no formality, nothing. We're like, yeah, okay, let's do this. It was like so quick. And I honestly, I get emotional like thinking about it, but I don't regret that for 1 second. Like it's just been amazing so far and I'm really grateful.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think like it goes beyond the choice of the name, you know, it's also like the whole idea of it and the concept.
The offering
was really born in both of our hearts even before we met and connected.
It's almost like you'd embodied the brand in a very deep way. And you used the word roots earlier, Shereen, and I think you'd rooted yourselves both in this brand. And then it came to fruition when you met in a more meaningful way because you each had your own forces that combined to bring it to life in this magical form that we see today.
Yeah.
And I would have never been able to do it on my own.
Oh, me either.
No.
I mean, I had been trying, sort of.
Yeah, I mean, she got it off the ground. But it's... we really depend on each other in many different ways.
It's a common trait of really successful partnerships that I've noticed actually is that they do balance each other out and play to each other's strengths in that way. And that kind of gives a brand a momentum in a whole different way that would not necessarily be there if you're alone. Alone is okay. I'm a sole entrepreneur as well. But when I combine my forces with other people or even when I'm working with clients, I can feel just how much more significance and momentum can come out when we're all aligned and in sync with each other. Yeah, it's quite powerful. Coming back to herbs and plants and natural remedies, they've also played a huge part in my upbringing because I have Iranian roots. And through my grandmother, who was a big fan of traditional Persian medicine, and my mum, who has expansive knowledge of alternative remedies and natural remedies. I remember growing up and there were many books around the house around natural remedies. And whenever I was sick, the first thing was a natural remedy. And then we went into other forms because we knew that they complemented each other. It was not just one sort of existing on its own, but we found our own way through it. I'm also curious to know, that's kind of my connection through a sort of historical maternal route into the world of herbs and plants. What were your main influences when it came to deciding to become herbalists? I'm going to start with you, Mahdiah.
I mean, that's such a beautiful story that you just shared, and thank you for that. And it's so amazing how we hear similar stories from so many different people that come from completely different backgrounds. So I always felt, and that has been the case for me personally in my life, is that relationship that we have with plants and with the natural world is one of the commonalities that you'll find across the world. And I think for me, it really acted as a bridge between my cultures. On my mom's side, we're Canadian, so indigenous Canadian. My grandmother is Anishinaabe, which is one of the nations in Quebec, Canada. And on my dad's side, we're from North Africa, from Tunisia specifically. And growing up, like, you feel so torn between your different cultures. You feel like you don't fit on one side nor the other. But that relationship with the natural world and that relationship with remedies from plants, and basically just that instinct, or the fact that we will turn to the natural world when we're feeling sick or when we need support, was one of the only elements that was similar in both cultures. So I guess maybe that's when I look back, and I think at the time I was not really conscious of it at all. But when I look back and I'm like, oh, okay, maybe that's how I found a way to belong to both sides of my identity, was through connecting with these traditions and through that connection with the plants. And then also growing up in Canada, because of maybe the name that I have and the religion that I have and that I grew up with, even though I have very strong roots in Canada, I always grew up feeling like an outsider still, because that's the reception that I had from, society. And then I guess that learning about and holding on to those traditions from my grandmother's side was also a way for me to like anchor myself in that territory. And then I kind of sort of replicated that when I moved to the UAE, because many of us are expats here. And it became a way for me to anchor myself here as well, was to make the effort to connect with the UAE nature and landscape and environment, and learn about the plants that grow here and that are native to this land. And also make the effort to learn about traditions around these plants here as well.
Nice. And
That's
Shereen?
so beautiful, Mahdiah. Really similar in the different, but similar with the identity confusion growing up in London, and like born to Iraqi parents that are like third generation British. I was, and I guess we were entered into the system of schooling, but like very British schooling, and I was the only non-Brit in my class most of my life. So I actually was exposed to a lot of like systematic racism, and looking back now, a lot of bullying because of how we looked, and like there was a lot of that all my life. But then I feel so British, and I was very loyal to Britain my whole life because that's the only home I knew. And then a very strong push from the family to always remember our roots, because that's what at home, like the language, the food, everything was Iraqi. So like a bit of confusion, yeah. And not really knowing where I belonged, but then not having been to Iraq. So but I wasn't conscious of all this as I was growing up at all. Like it wasn't an issue. I think now that I'm older, looking back, and now that I'm here closer to my homeland, I feel like a kind of like settled and just like a familiarity, even though you hardly hear anyone speak Arabic in Dubai anymore. But like, there's still something, even just hearing the adhan, or like that makes me feel like I'm more belong.
The vibes around you.
Yeah. And then I think there were so many things that led me to go to plants. But yes, we did have a lot of the natural remedies at home, and it was mostly from grandmothers, not my mum. But I mean, obviously it carried into my mum was quite anglicized by then already. Yeah, so a lot of that. So a lot from the grandmothers. And then I've always had a fascination with the natural way rather than pharmaceuticals. And I've always had a thing about pharmaceuticals, because I look back at my old books and they're all like books about big pharma. And like I've always gone really deep into that. And I'd much rather choose, if I can, there's a big place for modern medicine, and I think it's very important, but I'd much rather go, if it's for an illness that I can treat or be empowered enough to know what to do, as at least be informed, I'd always go the natural route. I've just always done that. So that's it. And then again, the plants from here, finding a way to reconnect to the land, to these lands, is a big, big one. It's a big piece for me as well.
Speaking about the plants from here, what are the ones that people can expect to kind of learn about when they come to you or they come to Hikma? Because I'm really curious. I'm a huge fan of plant medicine and the power of herbs, but I don't know very much actually about the ones that come from the UAE. So I'd love for our listeners to learn about those.
Yeah, there are so many, honestly, and we are still on that journey of learning about them. And we've been blessed to meet amazing people that carry that knowledge and that have been kind enough to share that knowledge with us. I think one of them that we have incorporated into our offerings and that we basically work with is palm pollen.
Yeah. That's a new one that we're really excited about.
Yeah. And it has so many benefits, especially in terms of supporting fertility. And that's the one that is really, I think,
Which is
native to the region, although
the
palm trees are not apparently
this
native.
specific palm tree, Phoenix dactylifera, is not native to the UAE, but grows
in the UAE.
proliferates here. But it's basically the pollen of the date palm, which is very interesting to use as a medicine. There, I was going to say about the native plants, we're still learning when we go out on field trips and we try to learn about the plants. There's so many as well, but it's very hard to distinguish between the native, like the true native plants, and the plants that have been brought in or cultivated here but are now grow in excess. So, and there's a lot of Indian plants from India that grow here. There's a lot of plants from Iraq. There's a lot of plants from everywhere. And I think you'll find this in most of the world is to find true indigenous plants. There, obviously, there's a lot, and we follow people that have documented these for years. But yeah, we're still kind of on that journey. There's much more information available and much more kind of at our fingertips from the Levant region, from Iraq. But for the Gulf, it's also something that we're like really excited to learn more about. Yeah.
And what about from the wider region? Are there ones that come to mind? It's fascinating because just that account and story about the different kinds of plants that are here, coming from India, coming from Iraq, I feel is a true reflection of our society as well. We're in such a wonderful, beautiful, melting pot culture over here. And I think it's a direct reflection of how people move through the region as well.
Yeah, and you'll find that worldwide.
Yeah, like, you'll find that worldwide.
In the old days, you had all the ships going around and like the colonizers and then bringing back exotic plants to Britain, and like they're all still there.
Yeah.
And then, but the thing is, what they say is the medicine the same if it's not growing in the conditions it was meant to grow in?
Yeah.
So, for example, Siberian ginseng, Eleuthero, grows in Siberia and very hard. Most adaptogens grow in like harsh atmospheres. There hasn't been enough studies or done to check this for specific plants, but will it be the same? Will it have the same hardiness? Will it have the same phytochemicals because it had to survive in that than growing in like a Cambridge garden? So that's something interesting to look at, though. Not many people have gone deep into like the phytochemicals of, you know, the plant growing here and then the plant growing there. But I find that interesting because it's something that's to think about.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Which is why we want to stick to plants from the region. Like if we bring stuff in from that's grown a plant that's grown in Lebanon from Lebanon or here, it feels like it would be more potent.
Yeah, and we've seen that firsthand actually, because we do source a lot of our plants directly from here, meaning that they're grown and harvested here in the UAE. And honestly, the potency that we get from these plants is just incredible.
From Mohammed's plants,
Who's Mohammed? Tell me about him. He sounds interesting.
He basically grows a lot of the herbs that we use for Hikma in the UAE, and he's really amazing. And he actually explained to me for the first time how much stronger and more potent the plants are when they're growing in harsher conditions, which is here, the desert. And I found that so fascinating. That was my first intro into that, and I started looking into it more. I never thought about that before.
They're more resilient.
Yeah, more resilient. They have to be. Exactly.
They grow under pressure.
Yeah.
It sounds like a direct reflection of human nature, actually.
Yeah.
Which is beautiful.
Yeah.
I think it's such a wonderful way to pause and reflect on our own ways of existence and how our environmental factors affect us as well, and how we move through the world because of that. And I think nature teaches us that in a very, very real way, looking at how that plant is more resilient and stronger and because of the conditions it's had to grow up in. It's beautiful. So Mohammed's the farmer.
So his farm's called My Farm.
My Farm.
My Farm, yeah.
I've heard of them actually.
Yeah, he's there. They do great stuff. So yeah, he's great and we're grateful for him.
How did you choose that collaboration or come across it?
If I remember correctly, I think one day I simply reached out to him and I went to visit his farm. And I mean, he's such a wonderful human being. He's so kind and like he's so gentle. He has such a beautiful spirit. And the way that he's so passionate,
he's truly passionate
about what he does. And he pours in so much love into his work. And we just thought to ourselves, like, these are the conditions in which we want to source our plants from.
Someone that cares about the soil.
Yeah.
Really important. And that really cares about the conditions the plants are growing in and not just thinking about yield and tons of plant.
Exactly.
Like he literally cared. When he toured me around, it felt like they were his kids. The plants were his babies. And I think it's very hard for Mahdiah and I to work with anyone that doesn't have that passion about plants or herbal medicine or anything. I don't know. I've got to see that like care and love.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it just feels a bit empty.
Yeah. And someone who's active about having a positive impact on the long run as well, because basically the work that he does really regenerates the soil that he works with. And, you know, the earth at the end of the day. We can't, in full transparency, we can't source all of the plants that we work with from him just yet. So we do have other suppliers, but basically that's our vision for the longer run, is to hopefully maybe one day be able to, you know, grow and harvest all the plants we work with from here, at least, you know, from the region, and have that close relationships with our suppliers and farmers.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as long as we're doing that, look, we're not buying tons and tons of herb yet, but like as long as we're doing that, you're supporting growers that really care. And I think that's also an important part of the ecosystem.
Absolutely.
Is like, you know, that even if they are abroad, we do things in a sustainable way as much as possible. Being able to support small growers that care is so important to us, because they need to survive, then be taken over by like massive companies like churning out numbers. That's all that they care about. So we've got to support the smaller growers, the smaller herbalists, the small businesses. Like it's...
I think also when looking at the values in which you instill in your business, you know, you are real people that are creating a real brand for real people. And that allows for a lot of opportunity to continue to question and reflect on how you show up and how you do business. And that reflects in partnerships, collaborations, and the choices that you make on a daily basis, which for me is a true depiction of what mindful makers are. They show compassion and consideration to those in which they interact with, but they also make choices that are beneficial for not just themselves, but and improve the lives of those around them as well.
That's beautiful.
You not only do that with your products, but also with the decisions that you make throughout the business.
Yeah, I think we try to move with intention, you know. I think that's like our starting point. And obviously no one is perfect, and no one's journey is going to be perfect, and we're learning as we go. But at least I think we try to have that initial intention.
Yeah. And it's a foundation.
Decisions,
Yeah, you've got to make sure that your soil is good soil, so that when you plant that seed, pardon the puns, but you know, it is true. You know, it's all about the foundation through which you spring off. And of course, like you said, no one's perfect. And I think that's the beauty of life, to make mistakes, to learn from them, to grow from them, or not even to do that, just to say, well, that was a massive F up, and now we're just going to do something else instead. But
it's happened a couple of times.
Yeah.
Like the 7,000 boxes we printed. No, sorry. It wasn't 7,000. I'm just kidding. But yeah, we giggle about it, move on and do the best we can. But it's been all right, as in like smooth wise so far. Because I think we're, touch wood, like we're like, I know this is used so much, this phrase, like growing organically. It kind of makes me cringe, but we really are. So it feels really nice. It doesn't feel like a forced push, or like, we do have moments of go, 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 and we're kind of, you know, deadlines and stuff, but it's just felt really natural, which is lovely.
Tell me about those moments of go, go, go. And specifically, I think the challenges that come your way. How do you navigate them? Are there any specific practices that anchor you in the midst of chaos and madness? Or do you just throw your arms in the air, scream and run?
Endless voice notes.
Oh, cool. Yeah, long voice notes, and usually me babbling away. No, well, my way is definitely to be out with plants somewhere, even if it's my garden or on the beach, like somewhere to connect to nature. And if I can't do it on my own, I'll just grab my kids and do it with them. But yeah, some kind of reconnection to outside and kind of grounding and rooting, like literally just barefoot, really, really helps me. And the sunshine, I think I feel really blessed to live somewhere where there's a lot of sun. It's really, really good, because, you know, growing up in London, it was dark most of the time. But I'll be really honest, I'm sure Mahdiah maybe has more interesting things to say about how she calms herself. But the days are quite mad with kids and then work and then studying. So it's recently been quite hard for me to find those moments. And if it's just a few minutes or a bath, that's like really nice, or like a long shower with like nice music.
That's
but
it.
yeah, it'll be the garden, and for me it will be like tidying up the garden. So like I'll go out and like pull like weeds out, or like I don't know, like clip the plants or whatever, and that'll be like it will settle me. But recently that's only been for about 3 minutes, no joke.
Yeah,
because that's all I can do.
Yeah, that's all you can manage.
And then the other way I think I love is cooking. So like when I make a meal, I try to not rush it, and I make something that I really am craving, and that's my kind of meditation. And I'll put music on and just like chop my veggies. And
everyone has their own way of creating that space in their worlds, and it's really interesting that even if it's 3 minutes in your garden of touching the soil or touching the plants and moving things around, that act in itself is really grounding, because you are connecting to the earth in whatever shape, way or form. And
it's instant, and I'm really, really grateful for that. And then one more thing to add is the actual medicine making of Hikma is another thing that's really, really nice and like really calms me and Mahdiah both, I think. So making the oils, making the blend, smelling the plants, like literally like that, the one that blend that we made for Ramadan, it can move me to tears just smelling it.
Wow.
And I'm like, God, am I just a weird plant person? Like, why am I so emotional about that smell? But like, yeah, it's that's a really nice part of, and like we're making blends for people going into the gallery, the apothecary, and like making something up and making it for someone that has said that they need help with something is the most like rewarding, lovely thing to do.
That space in the gallery is fantastic. It really blew my mind when I came across it, because it's just so unique in the way that it is created, in the way that it shows up, but also it's an unexpected space. You know, I've never walked into a gallery and expected apothecary to be there, and I love that
for like believing in us with that. Like,
it's so
she was
great.
so
We're
open,
so
and
grateful to her.
really grateful, because I don't think anyone else would have been like, and Sunny has a deep love for also the plant world, and that's really how she lives her life too. And we're just so grateful for it.
Yeah.
She's like,
she trusted our vision.
She trusted us
literally from scratch.
Yeah, it's a good space, and hats off to you for putting those out there so brilliantly for everybody to interact with, because even those who are curious, I think it draws people in to know more about the power of the plants and the smells and the way that it affects our lives. And yes, by the way, that blend that you've gifted me smells incredible. So I felt emotional smelling it too.
Okay, good. So it's not just me then.
And you, Mahdiah, how do you ground yourself or anchor yourself?
Yeah, I mean, everything Shereen mentioned really resonates with me as well. And I think connection to nature is honestly probably the first thing, especially sunshine. Like just feeling the sun on my skin will just almost have an immediate effect where I feel like I have my energy. It's like charging batteries, basically. A dip in the sea.
Yeah,
and then
so nice.
Escaping to the desert.
So nice.
That's when I realized that I am like my father's daughter. You know, like the sense of peace that I feel when I'm in the desert. And I had never really had the chance to spend much time in the desert before, growing up in Canada, obviously. But when I realized how much of a desert person I am, I was like, okay, there's something there, because my dad's basically from the Sahara Desert. And then what else? I mean, sleep. Honestly, I'm such a sleep person. Like, if I can get like, a 8-9 hour night of sleep in, that will be amazing too. And on a very different note, going out and dancing, like music, and just letting my body just feel the rhythm of music and just dancing and like sweating it out is something that really helps me feel more grounded and refreshed as well. I think
love that one.
Those are the things.
Dancing also.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
We have like team building nights where we go out and dance.
Those sound like the best nights.
They really are.
If only more companies did that, I think the world would be a much more smoothly running place, because there's something about dancing and just movement of the body that I think it's almost like an exorcism. It gets rid of so many things that get stuck in corners that they don't belong. And also the connection to other people and your own body is super important. But it sounds like each of you have this really instinctive way of knowing when to rebalance the elements within you. Because, for example, you speak about the sunshine, and that's the element of fire. And then you speak about, being in water or being by the sea. So the element of water comes to mind there. Touching the earth or being connected with plants, the element of earth. And then the desert or being outdoors, you've got the element of wind. So I think what I'm hearing is that through your practices, you kind of, albeit lead very busy lives and very demanding lives of your senses, you're called automatically in whatever shape, way or form to rebalance those things that you need within you.
That's so amazing. I've never thought about it with the elements.
Yeah, it came to mind when Mahdiah was talking about the journeys that she goes on.
Yeah.
And I noticed the commonality with you as well, Shereen. And I don't know where it comes from, which culture. It might be Chinese, but forgive me if it's not. But I had heard that when things are imbalanced within our bodies, connecting to those elements, then we suffer in certain ways. And the epitome of wellness is to somehow bring out a rebalance of those elements somehow. And there are different ways of doing it. I'm curious, actually, speaking of Chinese, how does your practice compare with that of traditional Chinese medicine? Like, are there commonalities, or even Ayurvedic medicine? I'm sure there's, because they use a lot of herbs as well.
Yeah, very much so.
That's
And part of our training, it's a very good question. And part of our training is, when we're trained, is Ayurveda and TCM is incorporated in, not in depth because that would take years probably. And it's an ongoing journey learning about those because they're ancient modalities of healing, as you know, I'm sure. But we use Chinese herbs, we use Ayurvedic herbs. The wisdom in TCM and Ayurveda is just mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. If I'm looking for research on a plant, I'd rather go to TCM and Ayurveda than like some science paper, because I, first of all, think those ones are usually biased, depending on who's written them or who's researched them. And the second one is you're talking about thousands of years of evidence versus trial on 30 people for a month. It just,
You can't compare.
You can't compare.
No way.
So for me, that's it. Like, if that plant has been used for 1,000 years for lung health, then I know that it does something for the lungs. Yeah. We do use those herbs, and we do go back to those teachings in our training as well. And I love it. I love that we're close to India as well, and we've got so much access to Ayurvedic herbs, Ayurvedic doctors, Ayurvedic clinics. It's amazing. And we have a lot to learn from them.
Yeah. I think one of the realizations that comes from doing what we do is it really forces humility, because there are such,
so true,
complex and beautiful different modalities, including the ones that you mentioned. And it's honestly like it's a life journey to learn about them and to become a practitioner in those modalities. So you really never stop learning about plants and how to use them.
No, yeah. I think it's never ending, the journey of learning. And I love that. There's always something new to be curious about or look up or research or read about. And it's fun.
Yeah. I think also connecting that, it serves as a bridge between sort of tradition and sort of ancestral learnings and science. And scientific research is constantly throwing up new things and giving us more access and more information. But as you said, it's all about the sources of that information and where they come from.
Yeah, you've got to be really careful.
Really careful, yeah.
Who financed it?
Yeah.
Where the money comes from, basically.
Where exactly, follow the money. That's what they always say. But these things cost so much to do, these trials, and most of them are funded by the company that's. And if you look at herbs as well, the reason why, a lot of them aren't, you've got standardized extracts, and then you have like the herbs and the whole plant. And pharmaceutical companies have tried to also take standardized extracts from plants and sell them as supplements. And that's a whole massive industry. So like, say you want milk thistle, and you can get the standardized extract of milk thistle of specific compounds, silymarins, that are in them in a pill. But the thing that a lot of people aren't realizing is the plants work as a whole, and they all have different chemicals in them, phytochemicals that work synergistically, and they're much more effective as the whole plant. There's a reason why that whole plant is together. So extracting one chemical out of it, it just doesn't work in the same way, and it will cause side effects because it's not meant to be used in that way.
So in that sense, would you say that when looking at a plant like milk thistle, it's better to take the whole thing? Or, because a lot of people do take these supplements. So do they dump them and use the powder instead?
I think it depends on what you're treating. Like if you have something, like if you've got someone with borderline liver cirrhosis and you've got to get a really high dose in, then I'd do like the whole seed, but powdered, but in capsules so that it's a bigger dose. So try and get bigger doses in an easier to take way to people. But it really depends what you're treating.
Yeah.
Like if you're treating someone for, certain side effects from their cancer treatment, we never treat cancer ever. And we would never say that we do. But to help with the support in the journey that someone's going through, or, it just depends. I think that's where we are trying to put a message across, where a lot of people come to us and they're like, I can't sleep. Can you give me this? And I'm like, well, there's many more layers that we need to check before we give you something.
Yeah.
For sleep, or like a protocol that we need to know a lot more about your health, because everyone's symptom is because of a different root cause.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for the listeners, it's important to know that none of this is sort of straight up medical advice. It's just for the purpose of discussion, and everyone is treated on a very individualistic basis when it comes to, like all things, but especially when it comes to herbalism. So if you are curious about that, then please do consult, a herbalist or a doctor that specifically knows about these things, because there is a huge world out there and lots to be discovered, but it needs to be done on a case-by-case basis, and everybody's different. And
back to your supplement question, I think it's unfortunately, because people think, it's natural, I'll just, I heard St. John's wort is amazing for depression, I'm just going to go start taking it. But then don't realize that they're on a medication that can interact with, like, for example, the pill. There was a few cases of that, unwanted pregnancies, because people were on the pill, contraceptive pill, and were taking it.
Whoops.
Anyway, yeah, so that stuff happens because people think, it's herbal, it's fine, I'll just take it. And I've seen that happen a lot, where people are like, it's just herbs. And
it's actual medicine, though.
Yeah, and it can, especially in standardized form, where they're in a pill, which is where most people get their herbs from, is in a pill form. Rather than having an infusion or a gentler way, or a tea where you have the whole plant and you're infusing it for 15 minutes and you're having it's like a ritual that you do 2 to 3 times a day. It's very different.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many fillers and whatnots inside supplements. If you don't look actually at the ingredients, which I advise everybody to please look at the ingredients of the supplements they take, because that is a very basic thing. Some of these brands have so much crap in there that doesn't belong in there, and you could be taking stuff you don't need.
Or the wrong plant completely.
Or the wrong plant. Yeah, that happens a lot. Adulterated plants, or things that are contaminated with things. And anyway, I mean, it's a whole minefield, really, if you want to go into that.
No, and I think from an integrative medicine perspective, it is really important to look at the person as a whole and case by case basis, and take it from there, and then look at quality over quantity, and how you move through that world needs to be handled by a very informed and trained practitioner. So yeah, it's very, very interesting once you enter that world. But there is so much power that can come with it as well, and so much knowledge and so much information that can equally enhance and empower your lives when done correctly.
And I think also giving people, I think what we love about herbal medicine is empowering people to take charge of their own health, not just us being like, this is, that we hold the key and like no one else can have it. It's like, this is available to everyone. That's what's so beautiful about herbal medicine. And just teaching people to, like what you just said, read the ingredients, to empower themselves with what they're putting in their body, and know that they can heal themselves, or their body can heal itself given the right conditions.
What we do is almost kind of, our process is to guide more than anything else. We can guide people to specific plants and guide them through that process. And there's almost sort of a matchmaking, process in place, where we know of all of these plants, and we are able to kind of see a specific person, like which plant would be the best match for what they're trying to address. Because many plants will have the same or similar actions, but they will work in different ways. And so it's a question of like matching the correct plant with that person and the way that a specific condition is presenting in that specific person.
Yeah. And the energetics of the plant and the constitution, that goes back to TCM and Ayurveda. So you have some plants that are bitter and cool and dry, and some that are hot and warm and or pungent. And we wouldn't give that to someone in like a hyper state, you know, that's very inflamed or red or has like red inflamed skin or something. I wouldn't
Or
give
high
them like
blood pressure.
or high blood pressure. Exactly. So that's a really fun part of herbal medicine, because the plants have different energetics and different effects on the body. And when you look at a person, and that's why we love one-to-one consultations, because you get to really sit with someone, get a feel for their energy, what they're going through. And
we have that in traditional Persian medicine as well, or traditional Iranian medicine, where food is treated, or whatever we put in our bodies is treated as the source of wellness, but also the source of any illness. And they have hot or cooling properties. So, you know, certain groups of foods have cooling properties. And if someone's ill or has a fever, then they won't give them the heating kind of foods. They'll give them the cooling foods, like watermelon being one of them, or, you know, other plants.
Cucumber,
exactly. I remember my grandma just like shoving copious amounts of watermelon juice down my throat whenever I got ill, and I was just, but it worked. You know, my fever just came down, and I was able to see clearly again. So
well, you guys have the most beautiful apothecaries in Iran.
They're incredible, aren't they? Very, very lucky to have that as part of our heritage and culture and traditions. And it goes back centuries. So, like you said, it's more meaningful looking into something that's been around for thousands of years and the wisdom of that, as opposed to something. Everything has its place. I'm not dissing anything to do with modern medicine. Absolutely, I think it's got a huge impact and a place in our world, and a need. But I think it's also about the expansion of that and the expanded mindset that comes with bringing everything in as inclusive rather than exclusive.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of prevention as well, I think.
Absolutely.
In what we do. So it's kind of like always aiming for that balanced state in order to prevent getting sick or, you know, being...
prevention is the cure, you know.
So, of course, if you reach the point where you developed a very serious illness or condition that needs critical care, we would never prevent someone from seeking that support from a doctor. But basically, there was a whole journey probably leading up to that point. And that's, I think, where we can have the most impact, actually, as herbalists.
So speaking of impact, I always like to ask my guests these two questions when we round up the show. And the first one I'd like to ask is, if you had one song that would embody the spirit of Hikma, what would it be and why?
I had two. I chose two songs. Am I allowed?
Absolutely. Why not? I'm feeling generous today.
Because mine has Here Comes the Sun by Nina Simone and Simon and Garfunkel, Sound of Silence.
Oh, gorgeous. Both.
Because they both, and I go through phases of what songs I'm really listening to, but those two have been on repeat. And I just love that one of them's like about the sun and the other one's like darkness. And both, I tend to dip into both quite a lot.
Oh, God, they're playing in my heart right now. I love those songs.
I can have 700 different moods in one day. So, yeah. Like 1 second I'm sobbing, the next I'm laughing. That's just me.
Fantastic.
But I love both. Like I can be friends with sadness and darkness and I'm okay with it. And then I love also the joy and laughing and stuff. So, yeah, I think that kind of rounds it up.
Yeah.
Go on, Mahdiah, I'm excited to hear yours. So, she has better taste of music than I do.
That's not true. But I failed at this exercise. I really could not pick a single song.
It's hard.
It's really hard. So instead, I just kept going back to a whole album that tends to play Like I tend to turn to that album when I'm actually in the process of medicine making, like when I'm actually working with plants and making products. And it's an album called Chamber Music by this Malian artist called Balake Sissoko, who plays the kora, which is a traditional Western African instrument. And he plays on that album with another musician who plays the cello. I forget his name. But it's just such a beautiful album from start to
Send
finish.
It to me, girl.
Yeah. So that'll often play
amazing
in the background as I'm making our products.
Nice.
Does it make you want to dance when you listen to it?
No, it's actually very like soothing and calming, and it like forces introspection. And, yeah.
Which is the mood we generally get into when we're making our stuff.
It's almost like a trance.
Yeah, even when we're not doing it together. I do that as well. It's like really chilled, like very meditative medicine music.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Really
I love that medicine music.
Like if I'm making our products in a rush, I stop because I feel like
it's part of the process.
Yeah, like I don't want to have that like rushed energy when it's like I'm making something for someone. I really believe that the energy that you make it in goes into what you're doing.
Yeah, I heard that about cooking once, that if the chef's in a bad mood, then your food sucks.
My mum's like motto, every time I'm like, Mum, how do you make that? She's like, I cook it with love. That's her answer. I'm like, no, but what's the recipe? It can't just be love.
2 spoons of love, 5 bags of love.
That's always been her answer.
Lots of love.
And it's true, she's very relaxed. And I get quite tense when I'm cooking in a rush sometimes. And even if it's a rush and she has to feed like 10 people, she's very chilled. And that's why it tastes good, I think.
Because she's done it so many times.
So,
she knows like it's gonna happen.
Yeah. But yeah, I feel that about our product.
Yeah.
And it's you also put like incense and like really nice music. Like she goes the extra mile, I think, which is so nice.
I love that. It sounds like there's so much poetry around what you create in the moment as well, which is, I think, felt through the brand. I'm a brand purist, and when I see your brand and when I feel it through all the different channels where it appears, it does speak of that spirit to me. So I feel like you're exuding that in multiple layers through what you do. And the music is also a reflection of that for me. So thank you for sharing.
It's a really nice question. Thanks. We liked it.
And then the next one is, if you could take one item from your brand to the moon with you, what would it be?
First, I was thinking probably focus, which is, it's such a complete medicine. So what we put forward is the nootropic properties of it, because it includes lion's mane, which is great for brain's health, but it also is such an important blend because of other plants in it.
It's a powerhouse. It's
such a powerhouse.
Like it's everything you'd need.
Yeah. It helps modulate inflammation,
immunity.
It supports immunity,
gut health.
So
it's
probably,
nutritional.
Yeah,
it's
nutritive.
Like a
superfood almost.
It's a superfood powder. So
Wow.
So I was thinking, because I chose focus as well. If we had to take one thing, that's what would sustain me. Because I was just thinking about survival.
Exactly.
Yeah. You've got astragalus, cardamom, cinnamon, lion's mane, reishi, cordyceps. It's like,
I love it.
That's all you really need in life.
Yeah, basically.
Fantastic. So you both arrived at the same conclusion.
Yeah.
That's definite. We're taking focus with us to the moon. Amazing. Well, ladies, it has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
For us as well.
It's so relaxing to talk to you. I feel like we could do this for another 2 hours. Thanks so much.
I could talk about this subject till the cows come home. I'm such a fan of your work and also of what you're doing in the world and how you're creating this brand that is so meaningful and with so much intention. So thank you again for sharing your stories with our listeners today. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how that unfolds for you. And I'll be watching your journeys very closely with a lot of admiration and curiosity.
Us too, for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Bye.
That's all for today. If you're feeling curious and want to know more about today's guests, then check out the show notes for more details. And if you like what you heard today and fancy taking this journey further, then click subscribe or follow us on Instagram at sorsha.edits and let the world of mindful makers become part of yours too. Until next time, stay open, stay mindful, and I'll catch you on the flip side.